This is your one and only 𝐸⁻𝐸 with your daily dose of video goodness, and today we're taking a look at Warhammer 40k Darktide. Let's get to it. So Warhammer 40k Darktide recently had closed beta access on Steam, and I managed to get access and check it out, and today I want to talk about my initial thoughts and impressions. So let's start off with the good stuff in no particular order. For those of you who do not know what Darktide is, it's very similar to games like Back 4 Blood and Left 4 Dead. There's 4 of you in a co-op mission, lots of enemies to slaughter, and you gotta go do some type of thing on a map. That's it. That's pretty much all there is to it. If you enjoy games like Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood, you will probably enjoy this game. One thing that I did really like about this game, as opposed to the aforementioned games, is that there seemed to be a lot more enemy variation in Darktide than in previous games like this that I've played, which was actually really nice, because in previous games like this that I've played, it's majority of the time just hordes of monsters that are cannon fodder designed for you to mow down, usually zombies. And then once in a while, they'll throw in one of like 3 types of variation of those things that are like little mini bosses. However, in Darktide, you get a ton of variation of different things, and sometimes multiples of that variation. For example, there is a sniper unit, and there are times where it will just throw in like 3 or 4 or more of these sniper units that you have to deal with. And then there's a variation of mini boss style mobs as well. There are dudes that throw grenades, and they are slightly harder to kill than your general cannon fodder mob, but not too much harder to kill. And then there are large ogres that take some time to actually bring down, that are full on mini boss scale. And this variation was just really fun to play, because when you go into the levels are always the same. The map is always the same depending on what mission you're doing. The maps don't change. What changes in these are the enemies and where specific enemies show up. So depending on the difficulty and the mods and stuff that you end up with when you go into said map, you don't know when you're going to run into some of these types of enemies. And I really liked this. Another thing that was really nice about the game was the graphics and the overall look. Now, I did turn down a lot of stuff when I was playing, because there's a lot of light reflections and bloom and just a lot of effects that made it really difficult for me personally to focus. I feel like this is going to be one of those things that varies from person to person. You may not have a problem with those things. Me, I'm old. My old eyes can't handle all of that input at one time. I found it a lot easier to turn a bunch of that stuff off or down in order to be able to focus. But even with all of those lighting effects turned off or down, the game was still really nice to look at. They really hit the Warhammer 40k style really well. It's dark, it's gritty, it's dingy, and you're in these areas that just feel very oppressive to be in. And I feel like they absolutely nailed it. The other thing that they really nailed was the combat in general. Each of the classes feels very different to play, and they all have their own unique weapons, and they put a lot of detail in those weapons and in those classes. For example, the 𝐸-𝐻𝐾inetic, which is kind of like a mage class, has a revolver. And when you are using the revolver, depending on how many rounds you fire, when you hit reload, changes the length of time that it takes to reload. The character actually puts their thumb over the cylinder, blocking the shells that you haven't fired, dumping out the shells that you have, or the shell casings that you have fired, and then reloads those missing shells, which is really freaking cool and an insane attention to detail. And all of these little attentions to detail make each class feel different and make combat overall pretty fun to play. Now, because this was a closed beta and just meant to be a general preview of the game, and I guess help them make sure their network connectivity was going to be good and be able to host as many people as they plan on hosting, there was a lot of stuff missing from the game, and you could see remnants of those things there that you couldn't access. But it looks like, from what I can tell, there's going to be a ton of customization to help each of the classes feel even more different and help set them apart from other people you may be playing with, which may be the same class. So I'll be real interested to see on release all the different ways that you can customize your character and how the different abilities that you can unlock change the way way your character plays and feels. So overall, from what I saw here, the game shows a lot of promise and was relatively fun to play. Now, there were some things that frustrated me. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Let's talk about some of those things. First off, the load times leave a lot to be desired. Now, I'm not playing on some rundown potato of a machine. I had the game installed on a fast M.2 drive, and I'm running it on a RTX 30 Ti, and the load times were absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. And once again, remember, I had a lot of the settings for lighting turned down and or off, and this made absolutely no difference. I've played games that have much higher settings that are much more taxing on the system that had better load times, which was a little bit disappointing. Another thing that kind of bugged me a little bit is there is a lack of peeking in this game, so you can duck behind cover, but I couldn't find any way to peek from behind said cover. And in a game where there's a decent amount of gunplay, especially when you're being fired on by the enemy, like I stated, there are sniper enemies and other types of enemies with guns, being able to peek from behind cover would have been really nice. So because there isn't any type of peeking, you actually have to stand up from behind or come out fully from behind cover and fire and then dodge back in behind cover. Now, while this isn't necessarily a deal breaker, it's just something that I noticed that would have been nice to have had in the game. And if there was a way to somehow do this, I couldn't figure it out. The other thing that bugged me is it doesn't really tell you where to go or give you any type of heads up of which direction you should go. It'll give you an objective, but then it just kind of sets you loose on the map, and the maps are nice and they're big, so it's kind of easy to get lost and turned around and just kind of meander around. Now, after some time of playing these missions over and over and over again, this won't really be a problem because you'll have memorized the mission. And as I stated before, the maps don't change and the missions don't really change overall, or the general goal of the main goal of the mission. There are side things you can do for extra bonuses, but there's always a main goal that you have to do. So eventually you'll memorize these and it won't be that big of a deal. But as a new player going into this, it was kind of frustrating at times because I'm like, where am I supposed to be going? What am I supposed to be doing? Yeah, I'm supposed to be going to turn on the reactor, but I have no clue where that's at. And in a game set so far in the future where they can pull your skull out and turn it into a robot thing, it seems like there would be some type of heads up display that would show you where to go, or give you more of a general direction. And that leads me into the next thing, was just a general lack of information overall. Like, it gives you some general information specifically for things like about the weapons. Like, it shows you a bar that says it does this much damage, but then it has other stats that I just don't understand what those stats do. And there's no tooltips to highlight over them to give you an idea of what those things mean. There's other symbols that show up on the screen, but it's like, what do those symbols mean? I don't know. You can highlight the cursor over them, but it doesn't tell you anything. And I felt like this was just a constant theme throughout the game, just a general lack of overall information that I wanted to know. Another thing that was really annoying, and I'm hoping that this was just a beta bug and this isn't something that we're going to see in the released version, and that was it did not save any of my custom settings. Each time I reloaded the game, I had to go back into my settings and change my keybinds and other settings. It did save my graphic settings, but all of my keybinds did not save, and my settings for mouse sensitivity, which was kind of terrible, did not save. And then I noticed that it didn't even make a difference once I had set my mouse sensitivity. It didn't really change the sensitivity at all, or if it did, it was not noticeable even set to max. The other thing that was kind of annoying was it bound your special attack for your weapon to the third mouse button, not your middle mouse button, like your side mouse button. And I don't know if this was dynamic and it somehow knew that my mouse had those buttons, but those buttons for me are rebound to my middle mouse button because they're easier to press than my middle mouse button, and it just bound to those, but it wasn't bound to the middle mouse. I hope that makes sense. So pressing those did nothing. I had to go in and rebind the special attack to a different key, which once again did not save. So every time I went back into the game, I had to reset that, which was relatively annoying. But those are things that I'm hoping will change. And I just found it strange that they bound the special attack to that when it's much better to bind the special attack to a key on your keyboard. It's way easier to hit. And then last but not least, when I created my second character, I could not skip the tutorial. I understand forcing players to play the tutorial on their first character, and I think that that's a good thing. Like, they should force you to play the tutorial. That way you don't end up with people who have no idea what they're doing, since this is a co-op game, and I'm all for that in co-op games. However, on my second character, I should have the option to skip. I shouldn't have to play through it. At that point, I know what I'm doing, and I shouldn't be forced to play it again. So I do want to point out once again that all of my gripes with the game are more or less just just small gripes. They're nothing that's a real deal breaker. I am going to play this game on release. It is on Game Pass. I will be playing it on Game Pass, and I am excited to see what the full version of the game looks like. I do hope that they fix the keybind bug, because having to go in and reset those things every time is super annoying, and I hope that they fix the ability to change my mouse sensitivity, because it's rather low at default, and like I said, I cranked it all the way up to 10 and I did not notice a difference, and it was relatively frustrating to constantly have to drag my mouse clear across the mouse pad in order to turn around. So did you all get to play Darktide in its closed beta? If you did, let me know your thoughts about it down in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful or informational, consider hitting the subscribe button and notification bell so you can be notified when I upload other videos. I want to give an absolute massive shout out and thank you to all of my channel supporters for helping to keep these videos sponsor free. You all are absolutely amazing people. If you would like to become an official channel supporter, check out the links in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you're shy, you don't like to comment, just hit that thumbs up button and share your support. Until next time, thanks for watching.